Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast. This is a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and in popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the program. My name is Bruce Markison, and as always, I am joined by Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Bruce. How's everything going with you?
Winter is slogging along. Keep thinking about spring. Keep thinking about those warm thoughts. It's hopefully just around the corner. So we're grateful for that. It's been a pretty good winter, though, and certainly for horror films with the new Nosferatu making quite a stir, and coming out very shortly, the latest adaptation of Wolfman, which sort of indirectly ties to our guest tonight. And Tracy, on this week's Ghostly Gallery, we're really grateful and honored to have the chance to speak to Ron Chaney. Ron is an actor, a producer, writer, and also the CEO and president of Chaney Entertainment. Ron is also part of one of the great families in horror history. He is the grandson of Lon Chaney Jr. and also the great-grandson of Lon Chaney Sr. Really horror royalty when you talk about the Cheneys. Ron, welcome to the Ghostly Gallery. Thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. That was a wonderful intro, and appreciate that. Great to be here with you.
Well, it's definitely a pleasure on our side. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. Let's begin, Ron, by talking about Chaney Entertainment. It's an organization, a company that you started back in 1992. Tell us about the mission, what you've been trying to accomplish with Chaney Entertainment over these last 33 years.
Well, the purpose of it and our mission statement was to preserve and perpetuate the family history. And my family has a really long history in the entertainment business, and then also beyond that, going back to Lon Sr.'s grandparents who formed schools for the deaf. So I think a lot of those things contributed to who Lon became, and then also my grandfather. But what we do in time, people say who, and then if you try to explain the Phantom of the Opera, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the old silent films, or the Wolfman, they usually can relate to that. The original black and white. So, oh yeah. And it kind of rings a bell then, but it's getting more difficult, but I would have to say, like you, there's been fans that have been there forever, and they've passed it on, and I've met so many of them. It's I really enjoy that they give me inspiration to keep trying all these crazy things I'm doing with Chaney Entertainment.
Mm-hmm. It is difficult sometimes to reach the younger generations. I know that I mention names like this, which I consider household names, the Cheneys, the Karloffs, the Lugosi's, and I'll mention that to my daughter or to some of her friends, and they just don't have any idea who you're talking about. But I'll tell you what, people of my age, people older, people a little bit younger than me, so passionate about this. I become more and more interested in learning about not only the films, but also the actors like Lon Chaney Jr. and Sr. And also interesting for me to learn that you've been doing some film work as well, something I was not aware of about a year ago. So I just become more passionate about it the more that I study it. And I find that a lot of horror fans who are similar in age to me have kind of a similar feeling, a similar approach. Over these 33 years that Chaney Entertainment has existed, what are the one or two things that you've accomplished that you're perhaps the most proud of?
I think very early on, remember we first establishing, a little foothold back on the rights that actually belong through my grandfather with Universal, about using film clips in movies and, taking for granted that they can just do that, when in actuality, he didn't sign that in his contract. So we kind of had some early goes, and I didn't really have a lot of money. I was a contractor, but I think we eventually settled, and I liked that. And then later, I think just in forming the company to put us on the map, I initiated United States Postal Service stamps that came to fruition not
Mm.
once, twice, with the Stars of the Silent Screen, and then the second one with the Karloff and Lugosi families, the classic movie monsters. So I think that really kind of initiated it for me.
Mhm.
And then I had an opportunity to tour around the country a bit that I've really never done too much of with the Postal Service, because they wanted us to make appearances. And
Mm.
and I went to a couple of conventions, and I was really quite shocked that there was still such a following. I mean, I have to be honest. I'm like, really? Here I'm trying to do things, and then they're already there and know a lot about my
Yeah.
family that I don't even know, because it wasn't everything that I had done all along. And so that was a wake up for me. So I really started studying it, and probably going back to perpetuating it was when my grandfather had passed away, and he was working on a book. And later, we needed to move my grandmother, and we found these boxes that were full of photographs and little notes that he'd talked about his dad putting on the makeup for the Hunchback and Phantom, and about playing the Wolfman, and
Mhm.
accompanied by photographs throughout, and little short comments, or he was hoping from his friends and fellow co-stars. And I think he was ahead of his time a little bit on it, just like a movie book, so he didn't get to finish it. His health wasn't good, but that we found those boxes. And I think at that point, realize I needed to try to pursue that avenue in my family history, because I think I always wanted to do it.
Mhm.
I think I always had an ambition to. I knew I would get into it at some point. I even took acting lessons and drove into Hollywood when I was like 20. Like, I didn't know
Mhm.
what I was doing. So, but I got married, had kids, and it never left me. So when I had the opportunity later in life, I think that's why I did it. My daughters were grown up more, but it was I dove into it more, and I
Yeah.
think I was open to it because I was creative, and then I was around other creative people. So
Mhm.
that helps,
Yeah.
because they'll spur you on, and they'll get your
Sure.
ideas going. And then, then it was really fun creating different projects that, and I took whatever avenue kind of came. So I had my licensing, which we do the rights for Lon Senior and Junior. And we work with Universal, but a lot of different companies that do products. Yeah. So that's that thing. And then I've done some productions with the Phantom of the Opera, where we had an orchestra playing with the original film, and
Nice.
also a pianist and violinist playing the original score from 1925, because I had those two books, so I did it live. It was really fun.
Mm.
People really enjoyed it. And like you said, getting to new generations. When I did those things and I was able to actually show it to people live, and I gave a little
Mm.
bit of history, and make the place look like the Phantom of the Opera. We did all kinds of different things. I worked with the community. It touched all of them. We interviewed some. They go, "Oh man, I was blown away by that. I didn't think that would happen." And the kids, we had for dress rehearsal, we had like fifth and sixth graders, and I think even some younger ones, but high schoolers mostly. And they were sending me photographs and saying thank you, and then they were drawing pictures of the Phantom and different characters. It was really like, you made them do this project, so that was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, kind of just branched out, and if I can afford it, I try it. the fact that I probably started so late, it's hard for me just to jump in and go, okay, here, you need to take me, you know. But I worked for a very good friend of mine. I actually hired him to shoot that my event that I produced there with the Palm Springs Film Festival. And we had Ray Bradbury was there and Carla Lemon, Tori Ackerman. They were my guests. And they talked about early days and the influence Lon Chaney had on him. And we sold out. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I like entertaining people, I suppose. So I got a big kick out of that. So that set me off
great.
on a journey of collecting music. So that took me down one avenue I never thought I'd go.
Yeah. You mentioned the book your grandfather started. Have you been able to finish it?
I'm close.
Okay.
I keep saying that. I've been saying it for 20 years, but I actually do have a copy of it. I'm in the editing stage of it. I hope to have it out this year, but it's
nice.
Kind of its time. I just seem to get distracted doing other projects because if I get excited about it, it's really hard for me not to pursue it because I feel like I got a time limit that I have to get this done now. You know, I'll get back to that. Yeah, it's close. It's 360 pages. So and that's just Lon Sr.'s life, a little bit of the background of my family, all the way going back to their arrival in America. So you can kind of see a migration and where they end up going all the way across the country, you know, and end up in Hollywood. It's kind of an interesting story to say the least, you know, through the Wild West and all that type of thing. So one of the subjects I love was history. So I've been able, through learning about my family, also I've tried to incorporate the other history that was going on with it. I hope to give it a better perspective of people that might look at it. And also my thought was I'm storyboarding for a film, you know, I'm putting all the really nice things that chronologically go with what happened to them, you know, and it was quite dramatic. You know, my great grandfather, my grandmother, Cleva, was on stage for 10 years with him. And then my grandfather was tagged along with them, you know, all through doing barnstorming vaudeville. And he appeared in hundreds, if not 1,000 stage appearances, doing 1 and 2 night stands, 1 week, 2 weeks if they were lucky, often going broke. He was always trained from town to town, and he traveled all over the United States and Canada. It was amazing. And I've been able to reconstruct that history. That's why it's taken a while, and sometimes I need a break from it because you're locked on this information. Don't leave me alone. I'm looking for a tidbit I haven't found before. So it's a lot of fact checking just to make sure I'm trying to be as correct as I can be. But it was fun once I kind of learned how to do the program. And then with the archives that I've amassed and was passed down from my grandfather, and then I started collecting, you know, and I was licensing things. So I have a lot of things I want to do. I just don't know if I can do them all. So I'm just shooting one at a time.
Well, I'm going to be getting 2 books when it comes out, one for me, and I'll get one for Tracy as well. I find it a fascinating subject when talking about your grandfather, Lon Chaney Sr. We're going to talk a lot more about your family, Ron, but I wanted to ask about a newer project for Chaney Entertainment. It's a graphic novel based on the silent era film, London After Midnight. It is, of course, a lost film, but we do have some sense of what the general storyline was. Tell us about this graphic novel and when that might be coming out.
Well, it should be out in April. So we had a Kickstarter recently for it, and it did very well. We're really excited. You know, we were hoping to get 10,000 so we could do a first run and hopefully pay for it. And we ended up getting 20. So we hit all of our goals. And we had a lot of incentives, so I think people were excited about it. And we were using our social media at that time to try to do the best we could to get the word out there. But how that started was interesting because within our archives, I have a lot of records of that movie and Lon's career just at MGM. And so I found a couple of different versions. So there was a couple earlier drafts that Todd Browning had done. And then right at the very end, Irving Thalberg, and it was only like a week apart. It was really weird. They kind of went in and added a whole bunch of parts to it. So it ended up being like 325 scenes, let's say. And it wasn't that much before, but they also took some things out of there I thought were pretty cool. So in comparing the two, so I compared 3 versions of London, and then there was also a novel. So the novel apparently was to explain a lot of things that a silent film really couldn't, in title cards and action and that type of thing, especially with London After Midnight's first title was supposed to be released as The Hypnotist. So he was a Scotland Yard inspector that used hypnosis to get somebody guilty to reenact their crime if he can put them mentally in the right situation. So within that, between all of those combinations, I did a mixture, and where they didn't come together properly, I wrote bridging scenes that made them come together, that seemed natural for its time. And then, so that's how I came up with the script. And we were going to shoot it in New York, and there was a supposed copyright issue somebody brought up, and I just went, oh, shoot. I think it's expired. I mean, the film's over 70, like 85 years old, and it's lost. Who's got a copyright on it? But we were going to do a Kickstarter, and I just couldn't do it because I wasn't positive. And then eventually I did. I just tossed it into my filing cabinet and went on to the next project. And then I met the publishers in Michigan when we premiered our stage play. So it's a musical about Lon Chaney, and we finally got a place after COVID and everything to give us a shot at putting it on, on the board. So that was exciting. But within that, I met this gentleman, and he showed me this graphic novel, and I had a couple of other scripts that I've done similar to London After Midnight. Didn't go anywhere, and I had to go back to work again to make money. So they asked me what it was. I said, hey, I want to do that because maybe this way people can see what I wrote, and we can, because it's very visual. And and I followed the original script because the concept, and we were really close in New York, but I left all the original scenes in it. Okay, so we were going to shoot it digitally, and then all the scenes that I added to it were also within the script into the breakdown. It would make the complete story, and so we were going to shoot it that way. And it would be sound, but we would make it silent. So I was going to do 2 versions. I guess that's the essence. I was going to recreate the original and then convert it back to black and white and add the title cards and follow the original movie so we could know what it looked like. Right. And I also had the music sheet for it. So doing the Phantom before, I kind of knew how it was, and you read the titles and it's on there. It shows you what was in the movie and it matches the script. So you're correct. And then in addition to it, the whole thing would be in there, plus all the new scenes. We shot it in color, so it would have dialogue. So in essence, I was be able to shoot 2 movies with one shoot, one to recreate the original, and then the one for a newer generation with sound, with a new soundtrack and audio. So the sound version of London. And I might change it a little bit too, just to make it a little more scary, but I think you could. Yeah, it's just kind of fun story, and I'm just excited they wanted to do it. So it finally came to fruition, and they brought a great team together, Dirk Manning and Source Point Press, and uh, we got it done. Now it's just on its way of getting printed and being released. I think it's in April, May at the
Yeah.
latest.
Definitely looking forward to see that. This is a graphic novel for the lost silent era film London After Midnight, scheduled for a release April of 2025. Ron, let's talk more about your family and about yourself, too. You were born in the mid-1950s, so that was well after Lon Chaney Sr. passed away, so there was no opportunity for you to know him firsthand. What have some of your family members told you about the kind of man that he was, what he was like?
Well, I remember Gramps telling me about his dad doing the role Blizzard in The Penalty, where he had to strap his legs up behind him, and about how he used to practice around the house because you'd have to be able, when he went on set, he always wanted to be prepared so he didn't hold up production. And so he'd work all these things out at home, even his makeups he'd work out at home. But in that case, it's really hard to have your legs up behind you because it pitches you forward. So he had to kind of figure out how he could do that. So he had the leather harness made. And if you follow his life, he was around when they were traveling town to town on the trains. The other mode of transportation were horses and buggies, and so there was always leather shops. So he had his own leather make him a harness where he counterbalanced his pitch forward in the way he did it to make him not pitch forward. He had the end of it was kind of cut like that. I don't know if you can see that. So when he went forward, it balanced him back out, and then he used the crutches to stay up. So he said it was really painful, very painful for him, but he was a perfectionist, and it was always up to Lon to figure it out. Nobody had ever done it. They might have written about it, but they might have had a reference somewhere, but he had to recreate it. And often he took these roles on that were physically demanding.
Given the pain that he went through in so much of these makeup effects and these special effects that he created, he must have been extraordinarily tough and hardened.
He was. It was from his upbringing, I'll go back further, and I think this is why it was so important to put chapter 1 in there, which I call the foundation, where he saw his 2 deaf parents, and then they lived in the deaf community because his grandparents had started the school in Colorado Springs. So that's why a lot of the deaf at that period in time went in those areas, because they could be accepted and learn and sign, and they were always taught to do trades. So he saw them work really hard. He saw his family work really hard, his grandparents, not so much he recalls I think in one of the articles he's referring to his mother, who was a really extremely hard worker, but I think he was referring to his grandmother, who ran these schools as a matron and kept everything, and the women usually still do keep everything straight, but she was an inspiration to him, along with his mother and father. And all the kids were hearing, so his brothers and his sister. So there was a mixture. I mean, they were really the first coda, where they were in that coda where they 2 deaf parents but hearing children. So he didn't really start speaking till he was, I think, almost 4 years old, because his first language became sign language in pantomime. And so he had to, at like 10 to 12 years old, he dropped out of school because his mother became stricken with inflammatory rheumatism and was bedridden. And the older brother was working, and the dad had to work. He was a barber. And Lon had to quit school and take care of his mother and his younger siblings. And so he learned to cook and clean and do house chores and you just pitch into whatever you have to do to make it work, cook and
Mhm.
learn how to, take care of himself, and not only him, but, the others. And he had a very close bond with his mother. And then, and that someone else would be there because there was aunts around and uncles. There was more deaf in the family on the Kennedy side, but he would go into town, because the deaf school was outside of town at that time, Colorado Springs. And he'd go down there with his dad cut hair, and he'd watch everybody coming in and out of town. So when he'd go back home, he would show his mother, because she couldn't do much, he would entertain her. And the
Hmm.
brothers, they became so close, they could read each other's eyes. And he would do these
Wow.
little skits. He would do these skits for her to entertain her. And he'd massage her, and try to get her. She was, eventually she got better. Her health was never great, but she got better. And then Lon immediately went to work and did a few different jobs. One of his favorites was taking tourists up to Pikes Peak, with the burros, and going up at night and eating and then coming back down. He loved that. And then when he went on stage, his brother was a carpenter that kind of lured him into it. So that's where he said he was first introduced. And he said once he saw that, he knew that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah. He never had any problems with his hearing?
Never. No, none of the children did.
Never.
None of the Chaney children. There was a couple others that did, and some of the aunts, but going back in the history, again, I mentioned the migration. So you got to remember, the migration meant ox and wagons, and it takes 6 months to get a few states over. So apparently, and there is some notes in there, they would take quinine because malaria could be prevalent in the swampy areas. And, so I do believe, at least they kind of mentioned that when women get pregnant, that the one effect of that is the auditory of the unborn child. So that's, in there. And there was a few others, his aunt, his uncle. There was his aunt, uncle, and his mother. 3 of them were deaf out of 5. And some of the other ones that also migrated with them, I think some of their children were also deaf. So, that legacy in itself in the school still exists. That's the cool thing. I've been there a couple of times. They just celebrated like their, I don't know, 1875, I don't know, 150th anniversary, and they're still helping kids today in the deaf community.
Wow.
And blind. They adopted the blind not really far into it, so they did deaf and blind. Yeah, it's quite a story. I mean, my goal, I was talking about finding that book, was really, I think when that happened, we were moving my grandmother, that's what hit me most. That's kind of when, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. It just kind of hit me like, oh yeah, this is a revelation. You really should be doing this. And so my goal probably ever since then was really to do a movie about him, but I had to learn so much that I really didn't know. And so I've read a lot. I mean, I've collected a lot over the years. And, I think for the perspective of being a family member, you can see this trail that they've left, and as you trace it and you see the ups and downs. So then you're getting in the entertainment business now, not only the struggles early, but then the ups and downs of that type of life on the road all the time, being married with a child. Cleva was a wonderful singer. By the time they got to LA, they loved that because they did it through, like I said, more in the Midwest, Oklahoma, Indian Territory, Texas, down to, all the way down the South. Not really New York area. The goal was to get to Chicago at some point, but if they go broke, another manager pick them up, they go somewhere else. So he learned so many different plays, and they were successful runs too. I mean, he was with these groups, as long as they kept making money, but just like a lot of other things, they would break up. The road tour, some of the people would stay with them from the bigger towns, and some he was really more more of the traveling, the vagabond ones. But when they got to LA, a lot of jealousies. They didn't get along. She was really young when she came along against her mother's wishes, and ended up being with Lon and getting pregnant, and too young to really be that way. And Cleva was extremely high spirited and thought she was going to be a star too, and she was in a number of different productions. So yeah, a lot of jealousies, that things happen, and she eventually, they were playing LA, and they had separated a bit, but she was after. She said, what was it? They split apart, but they got back together. They were playing in LA, and she had played a cabaret show, but afterwards she'd been drinking and went to where he was playing on stage because they couldn't perform together anymore. They just weren't getting along, and she attempted suicide. So it kind of really, really messed him up. Obviously, he loved the stage, and that couldn't happen, and that ended their marriage basically. Grandfather got put into a home for a while until they could see what they wanted to do. That's when he went into film. That's what caused him to go into the early silent films. That was the juncture right there. That stage was really all he ever knew. So he had to really learn a whole new occupation. But a lot of the stage players he played with, they were all getting into it too. And he was a comedian and a dancer. So many people don't know that about him. He was like one of the most sought after choreographers. And, if anything he wasn't, he wouldn't always play the main parts, but he played several roles in different stage productions. He was a stage manager. It was just amazing. You say how hard it worked. I mean, the man never ceased. And when he wasn't performing and stage managing, and he had time off, he had to choreograph new numbers because, they were turning them. They were having new numbers every week. So that was in LA, and they were doing matinees and all day long. He'd probably do 6 shows a day sometimes. It was crazy. But once he got to the film, he kind of went on the same track. And, he did it really till the day he died. And he never stopped taking everything he learned in that journey I just told you about, and all those skills with him that he learned along the way, and how film worked, and then how to speak to an audience with the gifts that he had. He probably didn't know a lot of the time because he was so expressive. It was an art to him, pantomime. So he resisted against speaking. He was the last of the holdouts with Charlie Chaplin, and they both knew it was an art form. So when he changed that, things changed tremendously, because now teeth he put in or different things he'd do to his face, he couldn't do it in because he had to talk. And then also a lot of silent screen stars went away because they really couldn't talk. So they couldn't speak on film, and they went bye-bye. Well, Lon had been on stage, so talking wasn't a problem. He knew that. But it wasn't in his contract. He got savvy a little bit more when he got older. He went, okay, you could pay me a little bit more.
Yeah. I'll tell you, fascinating life. I was not aware of much of what you just said. That's really amazing insight. Now, in terms of Lon Chaney Jr., your grandfather, you did get to know him. You were 17 when he passed away in 1974. He'd been in ill health for quite a long time. Tell us about what he was like on a one-on-one basis and as part of the Chaney family.
He was pretty amazing. I'd have to say he was a larger than life man. We lived with him a while, but I was really young. I was like a baby. I was the youngest of 3. My parents split up, so my mom went and lived with Gramps and Grandma Patsy, and so he was real close to her. And so we would go we would go stay with him at times and then visit him throughout our lives. And he used to come down here and visit us, but he didn't like it in the desert. It was too hot. But I remember going different places, but I think you have to realize from the time I'm an infant to a teenager in high school, he passed away in 73. And I think I was 17. Yeah, I was in the summer. But he'd been sick for a while. So I think it wasn't as unexpected, I had seen him, and after seeing him my whole life in different stages of it, to see him more at the end, you kind of knew, wasn't, he was struggling walking and that type of thing. And he was thin, and he had a lot of different ailments, but he was always Gramps. We had so many different times, that we would visit with him. He loved to cook. He'd tell stories about the movies. He was quite creative himself. He had a lot of things, I think, when he got older, like this book, probably similar to me, kind of just chased different ideas that he would come up with. My mom would say that he would, he'd go, "Hey, what do you think about this story?" And she'd tell her all about it. And, he started developing it. So he did about 3 screenplays. He did a couple children's tales. He did a television show. And he just couldn't pitch it. He just takes money, and he was older, and his health wasn't as good. So a lot of those got scrapped. And I think that was also another reason I was excited about the graphic novels. I thought, maybe we can bring these back to life too. But I think even more than that, my goal was always to remake them. I mean, I wrote these things to make a movie. And in fact, you were saying what else? So I did a Western short film not too long ago. That was last year now. But it did really well. We won like 7 film festivals, and we were selected in a number. It was only like 9 minutes. It's called Devil's Den. And I just kind of liked it because it was a Western zombie. I had never seen that, like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Right.
There was an underlying, hopeful feature to it. They still had to write the script. But I had also written a Western horror, and it was called Phantom Rider. And I did another one of my scripts that I put away. But I always like Westerns, so it's in there. And then I blended the Western and the horror, and the whole phantom mystique only in the West. And one of my favorites, at least probably my favorite movie, the one I loved the most, was The Outlaw Josie Wales. So it kind of follows that, I'd have to say, that just as a clue, kind of in that vein during the Civil War. And then in pursuit of, these henchmen, he has to cross a river, and it goes into this dark area that he's got to pursue. And it shows of his adventure through, and he's only got like 3 days out there that he's got to get back, So it has Indian mysticism. I always loved that one. It was called Phantom Rider. Hopefully one of these days we'll do that one as well.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm in such awe listening to your stories this evening. I do have a question. Out of everything that you have learned about your family so far, what is the most surprising thing that people wouldn't know that you have come across?
What people wouldn't know? I think I've found everything that I did, since he did all these really cool characters and makeup and was so creative, you naturally, you would say, a brilliant makeup artist or a brilliant actor or whatever.
Oh, nice.
I say perseverance.
Perseverance. That's a very good quality. Very good. And
Never gave up. They should have given up. A lot. You see this timeline, and you go. Most people go, screw this. It's too hard. But they endured, and they both left their mark. One had to follow in the shadow of the other, which was very difficult for my grandfather. but he left his own mark. And I think I'm really proud of that too.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and just to touch base on your grandfather just for a moment, what do you think made his portrayal of the Wolfman so iconic and so enduring, and why people still love that film? And it's one of the top monster films of all times.
I think he gave that character so much pathos. You felt sorry for him. He was certainly able to express that. I've said this a few different times. People relate Lon Chaney Sr. because his parents were deaf mutes. I mean, he learned all of this just instinctively as a child throughout his entire life, how to not only interpret, but he interpreted other people. A lot of his area, people said, he'd come in there and he talked to me, and he had really dark brown eyes. They'd say, I swear to God, he's looking through to my soul, it's like they'd be all shaken, because he was like, he took things serious, but he'd mess with them too. But my grandfather also as well, those were his grandparents. He learned sign too. He said, I used to learn bits and pieces because I would stay with them, when mom and dad were traveling, if they were in Oklahoma and or in Colorado or anywhere near, he could be with his grandparents. So he said, they'd go on the trolley and his grandpa would teach, he'd go to be the barber shop. He worked there for like 30 years in a row as the head barber. And he said he would teach him different signs, so he learned different ones and expressions. So he always had that also. He also knew that his father was extremely unique. So it was really difficult for him because I think other people wanted him to be like his father. And he had to struggle too. When he finally decided to go in, he signed with the RKO as Creighton Chaney, his real name. He didn't want to take his dad's name because he felt he didn't deserve it. And I think he would have anyway, but he had some problems with the stepmother. But nonetheless, he delayed for years, and then finally he did. He said he got more jobs, because he was Lon Chaney Jr. now, and people still recognize the name because Lon Sr. was so big. But he struggled to get work, he wasn't struggling to get work. He worked but bit roles to get roles that meant something. He tried independence. He signed with one company to do a bunch of films, but they went bust after two. They were independent. So like even today, it's hard to do that as independents if you don't have the money. But when he clicked with Of Mice and Men, I think that's when it all really came out. He learned that being able to use all of those same tools his father learned through expression and sorrow and frustration or anger or whatever it is, they're abbreviations of sign, or of time. Those are all part of it. And he was able to do that as Lenny. You felt sorry for him. It was a sad movie. You feel sorry for him. You didn't really need to be the bad guy, but was it anyway? So when the Wolfman came around, he had already signed with Universal. He had done a few other westerns and serials, and he was doing different things. His first one he did, Man-Made Monster, and that was preceded the Wolfman. He called it his first boogeyman movie. And then when he did the Wolfman, it was turned down by others, but he knew it was his. He called it his baby. He said nobody could play it but me. And once he did the Wolfman, they kept bringing him back. They brought in other actors to do the other one, but they always had Gramps playing, Larry Talbot, the Wolfman, and so he's so identified with that. Everybody knows that, just like Carlisle has his Frankenstein, like you have behind you, and Bela Lugosi. But my grandfather, that was his favorite, the Wolfman. He called it gave him a little bit of edge of immortality with that character. So he loved that.
Oh my goodness. Oh no, it's an excellent film, and that's the first time I think I saw him in a film was The Wolfman. So it's a nice soft spot, and I believe it's one of Bruce's favorite movies as well.
Well, you always felt sorry for him.
Oh, yeah.
You like were afraid of him, but this poor guy. I mean, again, if you can make the audience feel that, I think that's the connection.
Yeah.
And the ability to draw that to the audience that you care for him means you've done a hell of a job, And I think that's why that film has endured so, and that it will far into the future.
Oh, absolutely. One of these days, I'm hopeful that my children will watch this film. I hope.
Let's hope so. You gotta get them to watch it. I had one. I did some haunted house, another venture. I went into haunted houses, but one of my wife's friend's son, he was really scared, of the monsters. So he was having nightmares. She was, "Man, can you help him?" And I go, "Yeah, I'll help him. Hold on a second." I come out to my office and I go in there. I bring in here, have him watch this. And it was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So I said, have him do this, because he was really young. He was probably 9 or 10. He might have been a little older, but he was right around there. So he did that, and for therever, he loved them. He loved all the monsters, and there had no more, So now he likes seeing them all. So that was,
that's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just have one more follow-up question. What do you think your grandfather and your great-grandfather would think of the way Hollywood and horror films have evolved today? Do you think it would be something they would be happy with?
I think they would realize things evolve. Everything evolves. I would think they like doing things that had story behind them, that those connections, I don't know, your story, that you would have some pathos, in the character. I think my grandfather showed that in the scripts that he did. One was called "Come On, Johnny." It was a boxing thing. It was a boxing movie. And he kind of had this supernatural, but very unusual. You wouldn't think boxing, but he loved boxing. I remember watching TV and we would bet on the fights. But he had another one called "Curse of the Gila." That you felt sorry for this character at the end. It was kind of this lizard type man, and they always had this redeeming quality about them. I hope with mine too, I've left some of that in there. I think I can still scare people. I do. I think you have to do it right. If you do it, probably a lot of people wouldn't even watch it, but maybe so. I'll definitely do blood and try to scare people, but I want there to be a story, and I want it to go on. And I would have had another short done on this one that I wrote, but we do, because of not these most recent fires here, but one before that in the mountains. We were filming that weekend. I had to cancel it, and I had my son playing the role because I got too old. I wrote it so long ago, I can't take it anymore. But it's got to have a Chaney in it. So I finally got my son to say yes. So we were playing with it, and it wasn't really going to show a lot, but I was going to be real suggestive. Like this is something more with the full script. I still want to make it. But it was meant to be a sequel to the original Wolfman. There's a tie throughout the whole thing that you realize a little bit. There is some link in there, but it is modern day, even though the script is old. The topics hasn't changed. It's about preserving the wolves. is tied into this whole.
Mm,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
I hope I do that. Well, they're supposed to make another graphic novel on that one. I've seen some of it. It was looking really good. So we're doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
London is going to be black and white, and the Curse of the Wolfman will be in color. So
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah. Ron, many of these modern horror franchises and remakes that we see today, they draw directly from the Universal Monsters legacy. I'm curious, how do you feel about the reimaginings of these characters? Dracula, Wolfman, the Mummy, the Phantom of the Opera, characters your family helped popularize. You see these newer versions of these monsters today. What are your feelings on them in general?
well, I think you see them evolving and making them, more to the audience. I don't know. I think they're having a hard time. Are we making like a hard horror film, like real bloody, that like a lot of this stuff is now? Because it really is terrifying. I don't like watching them. It scares me. So
Mm, yeah.
I don't know. I would stick to. I don't know. I guess a different. I like scaring you offhand and make it be suggestive in your mind more so.
Right.
I think. Can it go nowadays? I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I can show people it can work, and we'll see. I mean, it's not like real sexy or anything. I mean, yeah, I have that. I mean, you have to have that in a horror film. There's a love, there. And again, it's Curse of the Wolfman. It is what it is. This is out of my mind. I guess what I all of these things kind of come to me. I'm surrounded by it more. It wasn't in my earlier life, but since I've been collecting things and licensing things, and people have given me things for my collection, and those things inspire me too. And then the more I learn about them, I've been discovering my own creativity. I think more. I wasn't sure of myself. But I'm willing to explore, and that's what I would recommend to everybody else. They always ask me, you got to do it. If it's in you, you've got to give it a shot, And I think that's how I felt. That I didn't want to leave that stone unturned. Wherever it ends up, we'll see. I have high aspirations, but I've had them for a long, long time. But I keep hoping one of them is now with London. That one just hit, so maybe one of the other ones will. They all happen.
Yeah,
we'll do another one. I'm hoping to do a production of the Phantom of the Opera with the full orchestra playing the original score this year for the 100th anniversary of the Phantom.
a few years ago, there was a Wolfman remake done with Benicio del Toro. I'm curious, did you see it, and what'd you think of it?
That one stuck more to the storyline of the original. I did go to it, and I just thought, well, my grandfather's film was in good hands. They didn't surpass that one with this one.
Yeah.
I thought there was moments in it. I think it lost me when. I mean, this is me personally, because the movie was different. When he killed a lot needlessly, I wasn't buying it. That's just my own opinion. I think with my grandfather's film, he was kind of like, he was wild, but he wasn't like just thrashing everybody in sight. Like Frankenstein threw him aside, but like a wolf. He took him off. He would take on a bigger target than he could take on, but. Yeah, just different. It's just different. It's all cool, though. I mean, you kind of got to go with everything. I keep it open, but my grandfather's version will always be the classic. I mean, it's the one that all others follow. How do you get around that?
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera, even a lot of these scary clown movies now. You go right back to Lon Chaney as he who gets slapped. And that's a scary looking clown, just
Sure.
Bizarre storyline, but. You could be really scared. I think there was a line. I don't know if it was Ray Bradbury or Lon. It was there's nothing funny about a clown in midnight, at midnight, well,
Yeah.
you're probably right about that. Especially
Right.
to scare.
I think you're absolutely right about the Wolfman a remake. It was a good movie. I was entertained by it, but it did not achieve the level of what your grandfather did in the early 1940s. That original version remains the standard bearer. Let's talk a little bit, Ron, about some of your acting. You took part in a film, 2024, and that is a remake of Lon Chaney Jr.'s very famous film from the 1960s, Spider Baby. I really like that movie. Tell us about this remake that you did.
Well, I got a call from a friend. He said, "Would you like to be in it?" And I had just come off doing, I was doing something else. And I said, "Well, I like to get into producing too. I kind of want to produce a few things because on Devil's Den, like I said, it did really well at the film festivals. I also am working on it, which I never thought I'd do. I ended up writing a song, and my friend now and the actor, the zombie." I said, "What else do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a vocalist for a metal band." I go, "No kidding." I just happened to write this song, and I was hearing it in my head as something like that, but not maybe so extreme. I said, "You want to take a crack at it?" And he goes, "Hell yes." So he ended up, he reworked some of the lyrics, He said, "You write poetry." I go, "I don't know what I write. I just try to," it was just hit me in a way that I thought I should start writing this stuff down. Another friend of mine told me that, but he changed some of the words, but we went and produced it, recorded. I thought it was really pretty good. It has it's a metal song, which is cool. It's got a great beat. And then I said, "Matt, just make sure like the verses, I want to hear them." Okay. And a lot of metal, you got to really listen to it or see the lyrics to know everything they're saying, unless you're listening to it a lot, I'm sure. I said, "I want to hear the lyrics." So he did it in verses that he went into this other version of singing during it. And then he go back to the metal. It was really cool, So I produced it, and they put it on their first LP, but they're a very new band. They're trying to make it in the metal world, but that was quite an experience, a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing that. Never thought I would have, for sure.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so cool. You had mentioned a little bit earlier when we first started chatting, that you had previously attended like a couple of conventions and met some of the horror fans. Is there any stories that you have of really cool fan interactions that just something that's memorable to you that you would like to share with us?
I'd have to say, and even now, I don't do a lot of shows. I wish I was doing some more, but as I've told you, I've been busy with a lot of other different things. But for not only me, but my kids and everything, how warm and embracing they've always been to my family, respectful. And I try to do the same with them and be sincere and treat them like, I'd like to be treated. I'm a fan of other things and music too, but I'm pretty down to earth. I didn't grow up in Hollywood. I grew up kind of a lot different. I think my thing, personally, I like animals. I have a dog and my horse.
Oh,
That's kind of my thing. I'm not a big city guy, so most of the stuff I come up with in my office. But when I do like to go out, I love to interact with them. So many of them, and I've met a lot of people that have been inspired by my family. That is really cool. I'd have to say,
right.
of all my highlights, is the people that I've met. Just because I was related, and I'm like, oh gosh, that's cool, And I probably most of my life avoided that, and not even too many of my friends knew I was related to the Chaneys growing up, and so now I'm just really appreciative. You know, I get so many wonderful comments from so many different avenues, whether it's inspiration they have, whether it's makeup or acting or just enjoyment of their films, you know, just for so long. And then the repetitive, you know, the Wolfman fans, I mean, they're the best. They really are. I think they're all Wolfman fans. Like, we have our own club of all the Wolfman movies. They're all werewolves in a club, you know. Fans are awesome. I think that's been the greatest part of what I've done, people that I've met.
Oh gosh. Oh, this has been a pleasure, and thank you for sharing all your stories with us. And your website that you have, is that the best place for fans of your work and fans of your family's work? Is that the best place for them to gravitate towards?
Well, if there's one really big weakness, it's that. So I've just had the Western and film festivals, and so you can see it there. I think until you stop doing that, then you try to put it somewhere. But there's, I don't know, the whole roundabout of getting a short film out there. But yeah, probably the website, Instagram. I think as I do things, I like getting them done or really on the way. I don't trust myself anymore because I can get away from things. But I'm really, okay, it's done. Like London After Midnight, the graphic novel. So, okay, it's done. I believe it. It's going to be printed. We're going. It's a green light. Because I've had a lot of starts and stops, like the fire with the short film. I've just run into issues legally with Universal and just silly stuff. Instead of just let's go create some new things, you know, I guys want to do this. So which has made me move on to other things and becoming more rounded, I think. You know, my expert in all of them by no means, but I've learned enough, and especially from coaching, that it really is about teamwork. If you can't have a team you can trust and be there for you, it'll break down eventually, and you won't get your money's worth, and you won't be able to share it with everybody else. If you got one part of it can break down and mess the thing up. So that's what I look for now, and I've been real fortunate to meet some people I can trust and help make it happen. So the next biggest obstacle is, like everybody else, is finding the right money to allow me to do it.
That's always the eternal obstacle, is it not? The website for Chaney Entertainment is lonchaney.com. So that's LONCHANEY.com, lonchaney.com. You can also follow Chaney Entertainment on Facebook and Instagram as well. Our guest has been Ron Chaney. He is the great grandson of Lon Chaney Sr. and the grandson of Lon Chaney Jr., continuing the legacy of one of horror's most important and influential families, without question. Ron, we really appreciate it. I enjoyed your stories. Great information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you both, and have a great evening.
Again, our guest, Ron Chaney, we thank him. We thank my co-host and producer, Tracy Asteria, as well. We thank all of you for joining us right in this Museum of the Macabre, which it is. And we do hope you'll see us next time. Join us next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.